Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today I wanted to look at dungeon exotics and answer which ones are the best. I took a look back at the history of all 9 dungeon exotics under the lens of endgame PvE activities. That means I analyzed their past and present effectiveness in stuff like day 1 raids and dungeons, normal raids and dungeons, as well as the general endgame with things like Grandmaster Nightfalls and expert activities such as Onslaught. With this perspective, I ranked the top dungeon exotics and I want to go over them with you. Starting at the 5th best dungeon exotic, we have Wishender. This exotic bow is the oldest dungeon exotic, releasing back during Forsaken. It came from a quest rather than what we're used to now, being a random drop, but that quest did heavily involve the dungeon, so I felt it apt to include it in the list. Now, efficacy-wise, this bow has never truly ruled a sandbox, but since its release to this day, it can and will see use, which can't be said for every dungeon exotic. Wishender surely falls off inside of raids and dungeons, but for the more standard endgame, it's definitely earned its spot as one of the best dungeon exotics. The main reason for this coming from the type of playstyle it enables. The main exotic perk gives this bow wall hacks when you fully draw it, but that's not actually what makes it so good, at least in PvE. The other part of the perk gives it anti-barrier rounds, which is very good, especially for endgame content. However, the real juice is from its second exotic perk that causes these arrows to hit for multiple times. We can see it dealing considerable damage to Carl thanks to this fact. And what we're noticing here also is the effective range. In a live setting, players can use this primary ammo weapon to deal near special weapon damage with wall hacks and at incredible ranges. The damage output isn't anything stellar, but the safety provided from abusing this exotic makes it very good. And this isn't to mention some of the quirkier things that this bow can do. For one, it does 25% increased damage against anything that has a Witherhoard stuck in it, and 10% flat increased damage against taken enemies. And then its piercing effect also allows us to cheese certain bosses. The most prominent example in my mind was Brachyon from the Avalon exotic mission. Not only would this bow do much more damage than usual, but it could just damage the boss when it was supposed to be immune. Silly cheeses like this and its standard potency make it a safe number 5 on this list. On to number 4, we have the Navigator. This strand trace rifle drops from Ghost of the Deep and performs somewhat similarly to Wishender. That meaning it was never the undisputed king of a sandbox, but has remained a powerhouse. As for its results in the endgame, it differentiates from our previous entry, this time being pretty good in standard endgame, but especially powerful for high tier endgame challenges, things like speedruns or raid and dungeon lowmans. This weapon has seen use as recently as the solo raid tournament, where contestants use this exotic to chunk boss health bars. This all being enabled by its catalyst. This catalyst allows users to put down lingering grapple points at will. Pairing that with grapple grenade and some source of increased melee damage, you now have infinite high damage punches. This playstyle could also be seen in standard in-game activities if so inclined, with one of my favorite places to do this being Onslaught. But even aside this overpowered yet niche use of the Navigator, support players can make use of its other exotic perks to supply their fireteam with woven mail while also severing enemies. To be frank, it's interesting that one weapon performs on both extremes of a sandbox, enabling massive damage or upping team survivability. But at the end of the day, the Navigator is still a trace rifle. And while its special effects are super desirable, the weapon itself leaves a bit to be desired. With that said though, the positives outweigh the negatives and give it spot number 4 on this list. Now on to number 3, we have Buried Bloodline. This Void rocket sidearm drops from the Warlord's Ruin dungeon. It actually dropped at the same time as the first ever rocket sidearm, Indebted Kindness, but performs vastly different. This exotic honestly could have been number 2 given its general popularity and potency across all the sandboxes it's been around for. Now as for where people use it, I'm aware that players use this weapon just kind of everywhere in the in-game. Some popular combos are Gerfalcon's Hunters making use of the Void element for that perma-invis, perma-volatile rounds build, and Titans with Hazardous Propulsion, which allows them to buff this sidearm's damage while you get all the benefits of the exotic itself. Those main benefits being Devour and Weaken. The secondary exotic perk gives this weapon Devour after scoring 4 red bar kills or 1 kill on any higher tier of enemy, and Devour, as you know, is one of the most overpowered buffs in this game. Instant health regen and a refresh of the buff on any kill is pretty ridiculous. But Titans and Hunters would be foolish to give up using Buried Bloodline because it's essentially the easiest way to actually get Devour. Now what gives Buried Bloodline even more potency is that while you're benefiting from one of the strongest survivability buffs in the game, the catalyst kicks in and will weaken anything that you hit. Besides this being a universal debuff and your teammates doing increased damage to weaken enemies, it can be considered a 15% buff to Buried Bloodline while you have Devour active. This again pairs beautifully with builds in this game, just like the ones I mentioned a second ago. Hunters can use the Weaken to proc Stylist Executioner for their Gerfalcon's build, and Titans can stack damage increases with Hazardous Propulsion. The only issue that this sidearm can run into is that normal rocket sidearms exist. And if you have other means of survivability, a weapon like Tenacious Mastery doesn't take up your exotic slot, and it might be a better option. Regardless though, Buried Bloodline is easily strong enough to earn the number 3 spot. Now before number 1 and 2, we have the other 4 exotics that didn't make it to this list. Those being Finality's Augur, Icebreaker, Heart Shadow, and Hierarchy of Needs. These exotics just don't really meet the mark for me to consider them that good. Each has their use and they're definitely all cool, but this is a list about the results in the endgame across multiple sandboxes, and none of what I just listed have actually been near meta. There may come a time where one or multiple of these weapon types receive a buff and these dungeon exotics get to shine, but until then, all of these remain in my vault, and I'd be willing to bet that they're all either deleted or still in your vault too. Also, before we finish out the list, if you enjoy this content, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. That way you don't miss out on my future uploads. Now, with that said, for number 2, we have Xenophage. This exotic has kind of been all over the place since its hidden quest launched with Pit of Heresy from the Shadowkeep DLC. Xenophage has seen success as a no-brain DPS weapon for bosses. It was the go-to for specific encounters like security on Deepstone Crypt, but more commonly, Xenophage is used as a very easy method of nuking high health targets. A notable use of that, which comes to mind, was King's Fall Day 1. During the Totems encounters, players would use Xenophage to easily 1 or 2 tap any lethal adds. The most recent time Xeno could have been considered meta was during Into the Light with Onslaught's release. During that time, Xenophage picked up far more ammo from bricks than intended and gave birth to the Xeno-Xeno combo. This essentially generated infinite ammo and allows players to breeze through that activity. Even after that interaction was patched, Xeno is still a go-to gun people use to just kill things good. We can see that on Raid Hub with Xeno being the 4th most used weapon as of this recording. So to sum up this gun, Xenophage's best description is that it gets the job done with little fanfare, and that's why it's number 2. But now, number 1, to no one's surprise, is Gatherhorn. This rocket that released with Grasp of Avarice in the 30th anniversary DLC has defined multiple metas over the years and continues to be a safe pick to this day. It was the meta for Day 1 Vow the Disciple with teams using an Izanagi rocket combo, and then resurfaced for Root of Nightmares with Starfire Protocol and rockets, and then again for Crota's End with more Izanagi and rocket combos. Now, the reason why Gatherhorn is so good is from its secondary exotic perk, which effectively gives all of your teammates with legendary rockets a 30% damage buff for free. This massive buff means that anytime rockets are a viable option, the sandbox has to be far weighed into a different weapon type for rockets not to be the go-to meta option. Like right now, at the recording of this video, Lydiers get a free debuff and free reloads, but should Edge of Fate come out with an even playing field, this exotic rocket launcher may just own one more Day 1 raid race. And that's everything I wanted to say. Let me know what you thought about this list down below. And if you want to support me, support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription would go a very long way. And if you want to support me and support the channel, you can also join the Discord. And if you can't think of a comment down below, Dungeon Exotics. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.